presentation. Like an official intro, so then we will cut. Because you see, like for everybody, we want that you guys understand our vision, and then we can only start the conference.
Forget the war.
Think about how it could be. A new mindset has arrived, where to share has become our greatest power.
It is this energy that guides us, will enlighten us.
Where meaning and purpose is a flame.
Burn inside every soul on the planet.
Welcome to the human-to-human model, uniting and inspiring leaders globally.
To build together with meaningfulness and joy.
Opening new possibilities for people.
Anticipating disruption. Rethinking society.
Who will reach their potential because the future is today.
Join us
To be a sustainable plus 100 world.
And I think right now is clearly the way to act. Lack of clean energy will affect the Earth's core later.
I find that when people begin making small changes, they gradually get bigger because they get this feeling, I am doing something.
So we moved from greed-based civilization to human value-based civilization. Making money is a happiness. Making other people happy is a super happiness.
Wondering about your future? So bring your DNA to us today.
So thank you for bringing your DNA to us today. And then I would like to just very shortly give a floor to Florence and to Luc, and then Frank, the floor is yours. So very short welcome, Florence. Thank you so much for joining from France, and then afterwards, Luc.
Yes, so I'm very pleased to introduce this session on hydrogen. So my name is Florence Lambert. I've been CEO of CEA Litten for 8 years now. Ines, which is well known for its role in photovoltaic, is part of Litten. And for me, which is very important, is that today renewable energy and especially photovoltaic is really the main driving force. But this steep increase of photovoltaic and in general renewable energy will lead to other parallel revolutions such as storage. And current research focus on battery and hydrogen with today a complementary approach. Battery for small mobility and short-term storage, hydrogen to electrify large vehicles, including marines and aeronautics applications, and term storage. What we can say today is that PV produced in remote sunny areas will create the need for new ways to transport energy. And maybe you have in mind that it's the case, for example, in Chile. So there's no doubt that shipping of hydrogen will play a crucial role, leading to new evolution in our environment. And on the basis of this energy evolution, we are going to see some geopolitical changes due to energy production, transportation, and distribution. And to conclude this introduction, I would like to underline that hydrogen will also help in sector coupling for decarbonization of the other energy sectors, as we cannot do everything with only electricity. And we can mention power to hydrogen, power to gas, and power to liquid. So I'm very happy to have this session now. And maybe we can move towards the first speaker.
Yeah, maybe also a very short welcome from my side before we go to first speaker. So my name is Luc Raret. I'm a vice president from Nel Hydrogen, responsible for sales and marketing for the electrolyzers. I think we are writing today history in a way that this is the first time, to my knowledge, that this kind of a conference where we have a full week covering all technologies of renewable energy and technologies related to, combined with regional reports, a full week conference in this kind of e-platform, what we are doing today. And I think the second part where I see that we are writing history is the recognition of hydrogen in these so-called related technologies to renewables, to make it possible to get a larger penetration of solar, wind, and other renewable technologies in the world by using sector coupling, for instance. And I think those are the things which we will be discussing in these 1.5 hours. So I would like to give now the floor to our moderator, Frank Wouters.
Yes, thank you all. Good afternoon, everyone. Today you'll hear about hydrogen and its role in the energy transition. Last week I was in a webinar about the oil price, and that's a daily affair. And somebody said this morning that who needs football, you know, when you have the oil market. There was a guy that told me when I started talking about hydrogen, because that's what I do, he would be rich every time he would have gotten $1 if somebody would have mentioned hydrogen in the last couple of months. And I'm pretty sure that he's actually sad that he didn't get the money, because you know, we've seen the oil prices crash into negative territory last night. The current stage that hydrogen is in was described by somebody as the sneeze phase. So basically, and you know, pardon the pun, I don't want to be sarcastic, but this was actually before COVID. So you feel that you have to sneeze, you know it's coming, it's completely inevitable, but it also takes a little bit longer than you think. And what we're trying to better understand today is whether COVID, the current social, health, and economic crisis that we're in, whether that has an impact, or what kind of impact it has on this inevitable development of the energy transition, which is hydrogen. And I'm a lucky man today, because I have an excellent lineup of industry insiders that will help us better understand that question. Now, the way it works today is we've already started with brief introductions, but we will go you know, along the lineup. Everybody will start with a brief introductory statement. Some have a few slides to accompany that. For the ones that are basically online in the Zoom call, please feel free to use the chat box, because after the introductions, we will provide the opportunity also for an interactive question and answer session. We do have a hard stop. I think this is technology. It will just go blank. You know, this is different from a physical conference. This is the brave new world that we're in. It will just shut off. So please be to the point and you know, make sure that you know, that you get your point across in the time allocated to you. We have in the lineup Ademo Skrenzi, who is head of global business development, green hydrogen and chemicals at ThyssenKrupp. We have Mark Rechter, who is the co-founder of Green Flamingo. We have Roland Kepner, who is executive director in charge of hydrogen at NEOM. We have Waldemar Wiesner, who's we have Mark Grunewald, who is in charge of power plants at MEN Energy Solutions. And we have, last but certainly not least, Jorgo Chatzimarkakis, who is the Secretary General of Hydrogen Europe. And with that, Ademo, the floor is yours. Ademo, unmute, please.
Maybe Ademo,
can you hear me? Is that okay?
Yes.
Sorry, thank you very much for the introduction. Thank you. I will try to speed up also, of course, because I think we everybody have a lot to discuss further. I have a short presentation. Hopefully I can make it work. Do you see my screen quickly? Can you see that? Please comment. Yes. Okay, thank you. I'm very pleased to participate to this e-network and eConvention. Very, very interesting, and to meet with people that are, I would say, the big defender of this green chemical, green industry, and green hydrogen. I will talk quickly about water electrolysis, sector coupling, and what we can do with this green hydrogen. The first point, maybe a few numbers about what is ThyssenKrupp: 150,000 employees, 43 billion euro turnover, spending a large amount in R&D, but this is to go fast to give you the size of the company. The second slide, just to show that we are since a long time committed to climate protection. You know, the well-known non-governmental organization, CDP, has been listed us as for the 4th year in a row. You know, this is the 4th time this year as a top leader in the climate protection. But going to the point, we talk about solar, renewable, and Florence introduced it very well. Hydrogen and green hydrogen is the best friend of renewable, and renewable is the best friend of green hydrogen. Why? Because we can make this what we call sector coupling. And by this small picture, you can see what does it mean, sector coupling. Coming from electricity to something else, because we need to electrify. And as we understood, electricity cannot do everything by only electron. We need to transform this green electron to something different that can go in all the application of the industry. First, we can replace a small amount of hydrogen that is produced today from fossil fuel, 100 million tons, which is a small business of 100 billion. First one, easy to do, in ammonia, in methanol. Second, we can make energy storage because with this hydrogen, we can reproduce electricity from that. Third one, we can go to the chemicals. Ammonia, for example. I always take the example of a small ammonia plant in Australia. By replacing the hydrogen feed from natural gas to green hydrogen, it's just the equivalent to put 15 million hydrogen cars on the street. And as being in the hydrogen business since years, we know how difficult it is to put 15 million hydrogen cars on the street by the infrastructure, by the filling station. So if we really want to decarbonize heavily, industry is a very important. So ammonia is one, and then go to all the other chemicals. You can start doing methanol and CO2 recycling and use this CO2 from waste application like cement or waste treatment to produce other chemicals, going to methanol or to gasoline after that. So you can see in one slide all the interconnection between the electrical world and the chemical world. And to make the link between the two, you need this hydrogen and you need electrolysis to do that. So we can, of course, discuss further, but you see the huge potential of green hydrogen to decarbonize what we call hard-to-abate industry for decarbonization of the world. Of course, this was a slide, but we need to demonstrate that because it's nice on the picture and nice on the 3D slide presentation. We did that. We make a lab scale, or you see it's a real close to industrial lab scale, close to our cement plant, where we demonstrated all the technology. It's not for ThyssenKrupp, it's for the, the hydrogen economy. We have to show that we can recover CO2, make methanol, make ammonia from a renewable, make an electrolyzer that is flexible to cope with a flexible energy from wind and solar. All that stuff has been demonstrated. So now it's the right time, as Luc said, to scale up. Everybody says scale up, we have to go in a real case, in a real application. And so to do that, we are already ready with 1 gigawatt of capacity of production that can be expanded to 5 gigawatt. It's just to participate to the common way of building the supply chain to be ready to decarbonize at large scale. And also, we have also experience by installing more than 10 gigawatt of electrolyzer, which are reasonable numbers in the world of green hydrogen. So that is my introduction. And again, I will be very much happy to go to the discussion and to answer any question. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Adamo. And with that, I will give the floor to Roland Kepner, who is in charge of one of the most exciting projects that we know in the Kingdom of Saudi Arabia. Unfortunately, Roland has a hard stop. He has another commitment very soon, but we're very happy to listen to him and talk about NEOM, I guess.
Yes, hello everyone. I share the excitement. It's a different experience. You're sitting in your room and you're doing all this, and you don't realize that well, it's not hundreds, but there's a lot of people looking at you. I haven't prepared a presentation because I have no equipment to sell. And in order to make it streamlined. So yes, I'm Roland Kepner. I'm since October last year in NEOM, Saudi Arabia. I'm responsible for hydrogen and green fuels there. What is NEOM? NEOM is a 500 billion investment project in the northwest of Saudi Arabia. It's going to be a completely new settlement with a large city built from scratch, and it will also include an industrial zone. The beauty of NEOM, or let's say the biggest asset of NEOM, is that we're embarking on extremely good renewable energy assets. We have both solar and wind, giving us the opportunity to realize a capacity factor of up to 72%. So all of us who think about capacity factors of electrolyzers will have a big smile on the face, because that's a lot. So we will produce a lot of renewable energy, but not only to supply that renewable energy to NEOM itself, but also to export the energy. So just think about what you can do if you build a complete energy system from scratch. It gives you a lot of opportunities and options to optimize your system and really tailor-made it not only for a 100% renewable system, but also to get your system ready for things like hydrogen and green fuels. We are working very closely together in Saudi, together with Aramco, SABIC, Ma'aden, the local players, because that's also an asset we see in the scale-up story. Of course, we can have technologies, we can have cheap renewables, but scaling up means a lot of investments, and it needs a lot of infrastructure and logistics. 15 years ago, when we started the story about hydrogen, it was all about electrolyzer technology and how to get the costs down. I mean, we're now reaching a point where the technologies are there. They're not at the price levels we want to have them. But now we're talking about logistics. How do we get green hydrogen across the oceans? So that's the next challenge and hurdle we need to overcome. So what are we doing right now at NEOM? At the moment, we're planning a pilot application, which will be up and running in 2022. It's a fairly sized pilot plant on green hydrogen and green fuels. And in parallel, we're looking at the moment at a feasibility for extremely large scale hydrogen plant and a green fuel plant on top of that. Again, we're looking in Saudi at a lot of synergy levels with the industrial assets we're having in the petrochemical industry. Just think about e-fuels and what you can do with our existing petrochem logistics and infrastructure. So that's something we are developing. And before I hand over to the next one, let me share some thoughts on the scale up, because that's part of the discussion today. As I'm now on the other side of the table, whereas in the last 15 years I've been an electrolyzer manufacturer, now I'm an electrolyzer buyer. It's interesting if you do the feasibility, which we are doing at the moment, and you talk to different electrolyzer companies, and again, I've been in 3 of those. It's amazing how quickly the proposed scale up numbers of electrolyzer capex fade away. Yeah, so no one really has the guts, I have to say, to arrive at the cost levels they're all projecting for the future. So you face them with a 2 gigawatt project, and you get numbers which are old-fashioned and which don't give you the level of hope which everyone is promising you. The other thing is, of course, you want to scale up, you need an off-taker, right? But you will not find an off-taker today because the market metrics are not there. And there I'm looking a bit around the corner to Yorgo, because there you're dealing with the same problems. I mean, everyone in Europe is talking about e-fuels now. So how to get this thing running, and we need to urgently work on market mechanisms to attract off-takers. to go that step, because I can tell you the willingness of investment in large scale projects is there, the money is there, the technology is there. What we need is the market. Thank you.
Yeah, thanks, thanks, Roland. Those are inspiring words, and it's certainly an inspiring project that you're working on. Let's hope the oil price doesn't hurt too much. Mark Rechter, CEO of Green Flamingo, the floor is yours.
Thanks very much, Frank, and thanks for Roland also for the inspiring words, and thanks for inviting me to talk a little bit about what we do. I'll share my screen if possible, just to put a couple of slides on screen. 1 second, if that works. That's interesting. I think that should do it. Yes. Hopefully, great. Yeah, so my name is Mark Rechter. I'm co-founder and CEO of Resilient Group, based out of Portugal, where initially we have focused on solar, and more recently, over the past 2 to 3 years, on introducing green hydrogen as part of the solar opportunity. The Green Flamingo project that we've been developing basically was started on the premise that we felt and we feel that there is a major opportunity to let's say connect the markets, the demand markets up in Northern Europe with let's say the competitive solar and green hydrogen markets in the south of Europe and the north of Africa. Specifically, this has gotten a boost, I would say, over the last 12 to 18 months with the cost of solar going down to unprecedented levels of 14, 15 cents, sorry, 14, 15 euros per megawatt hour. At which point the economic dynamics of green hydrogen become very attractive, especially if we can achieve the cost compression in electrolysis capex. So the project that we've been developing and continue to implement basically is the development of a supply chain, if you like. Like Roland mentioned just now, you know, the money is there, the technology is there, the willingness is there, but we miss the framework. We miss a little bit the initial impetus to create the markets, and I think that dialogue is now very strongly under discussion with the European Commission at different member state levels. So I think it's quite encouraging to see that things are moving forward in an accelerated fashion. But at the same time, I think from the project development side and from the industrial side, we all need to continue pushing forward to make sure that that we see the start of implementation. So Green Flamingo is our effort to help speed up that first mover or that first implementation to a large scale in Europe. The project envisions the setup of a consortium of companies across mainly Holland and Portugal, but we can also clearly see very interesting collaboration with Spain, Germany, Belgium in that sense. With an objective of over the next 10 years developing anywhere between 1 and 5 gigawatts. We'll have to see what the market will absorb, and connecting that production with both the internal demand of the Portuguese market, both industrial as well as mobility-wise, but specifically also to start, let's say, an import-export function into the, let's say, chemical heart of Europe, where the port of Rotterdam sits, let's say, at the gateway. So we have a number of goals to reach in by 2030, primarily, I would say we are looking to scale up to the extent that we can achieve a competitive price of hydrogen on hopefully a non-subsidized basis by 2030. And according to our forecast calculations, discussions with industry, etc., I fully believe this is very well possible. We're also looking at working very closely with industry and with manufacturers and across the value chain, so to speak, to make sure that we have a lift up, across the value chain, which I think is very important, because this is not a single player event that can make this happen. We really need to kind of have an integrated approach across the value chain to make sure that everybody can scale up at the same time, and to make sure that the financial and economic models work for everyone in that value chain. And to establish, of course, a strong base at the industrial side in Europe and other countries. The instruments that we feel are important in support of this strategy are very much the creation of visibility of the pipeline. So the visibility of the pipeline will allow the industry to invest in industrial scale up. It will allow the investment industry to commit volumes of finance. And it will allow the whole system to develop, on a relatively balanced, in a relatively balanced way. So we have to consider what mechanisms kind of make most sense to get the biggest bang for the buck, so to speak, also at the taxpayer level, obviously. So we're looking at optimization of CapEx and OpEx grant. We're looking at and discussing the EU carbon cost mechanism, because that's the other side of the coin. What is the cost of carbon going to do to make green hydrogen more competitive from a non-subsidized point of view? And what we clearly see, as was mentioned already just now, is that the companies are ready to go. I think the only kind of last step that's missing now is strong leadership from a policy point of view, and one or several member states saying, okay, here's the framework, let's start implementing. So like I mentioned, in terms of our goals and results, we're looking to create very competitive green hydrogen to be produced by 2030. We're looking to accelerate and to get a predictable growth of this industry over the next 10 years and beyond. We feel that this is a great opportunity for Europe as well as other regions in the world to try and achieve a global leadership role in this emerging green hydrogen sector. And of course, now for within the Corona environment and the challenges that this posts, we feel that we can create immediate and also sustainable large-scale job creation, which is something that's key also in the coming months and years going forward. So basically, these are some of the targets that we have. We are looking, from our perspective, to be a first mover project. We're looking to work very much in support of the 2x40 gigawatt initiative that I believe Jorgo will probably mention a little bit later. And we're very much looking forward to connect with other companies and people in this conference and to see how we can collaborate, because we do strongly believe that collaboration is the way forward to structure these supply chains and to structure these markets. So thank you very much. I'm looking forward to the debate.
Yes, thank you, Mark. And with that, I would like to give the floor to the other Mark in the group. Mark Grunewald is Vice President and Director of Business Development at MAN Energy Solutions. Mark, the floor is yours.
Yeah, thanks very much. I'm not sure how to manage if I would have to show the presentation or if you will do it. I don't know. Let's try to.
I make you also co-host. Okay.
So what have I?
You just choose. There is a button, like a green button.
The green one, which says
yes,
open the chat.
We are green hydrogen. Yes. So
now let's have a look if you can see now my presentation. I can see, but you can't, huh?
No.
Ah, here maybe.
Okay.
Now?
Yes, now it's great.
Now it's better?
Yes, amazing.
Okay, so I'm trying to run through. So first of all, thanks for the invitation, and I think first time that I'm in that group, and I'm very pleased to have the chance to talk to colleagues who have the same vision and the same things we are working at MAN. And I would love to start, because for the first time, with a slide just giving you a short idea about who we are and where we are coming from, because it's maybe interesting. If you look at what this company has done for more than 200 years, then you see there's a the marine sector where we're producing engines for the world-going vessels. We have the turbo industry in oil and gas. We have power plants, historically diesel and gas. And we have a strong after-sales organization worldwide in more than 120 countries. We are around 15,000 people with a turnover in the range of 3 to 3.5 billion. But the company was known historically as MAN Diesel and Turbo. And we changed the name to MAN Energy Solutions based on the fact that in the world of tomorrow, things have to become green. We have to go for, let's say, decarbonization, defossilization, and we have to look how to get there. So the company has to look at what is shown here to Power-to-X solutions, hydrogen storage solutions. How can we feed the world by producing green energy and being able to storage the green energy as well in parallel, so that we can use that green energy as a base load as well, not only when sun and wind is shining. So that was even a trigger to bring hydrogen and other ideas of storaging into the market as well. And the first footprint which MAN got in that area historically was in 2012, 2013, beside all others, when we were building in the range in the near close to Bremen in Werlte, a power plant which is only fueled by wind. And that wind power plant was combined with electrolysis to produce hydrogen, and then using the CO2 from the methanization of a biogas plant, and then producing in a methanization plant, which is the first USP, which, let's say, MAN really had, producing then synthetic gas, which can be fed in the gas system as natural green gas, but in this case, a synthetic natural green gas, SNG, as we say. And then this was used to fuel cars from Audi. So Audi was able to allow their customers to run their cars on green gas, which was on a virtual basis. So with that expertise, which is now 7 years running, a 6 megawatt plant, still one of the biggest one, we got a footprint. And then we learned, when we looked at the world of tomorrow, that it's great to be able to produce something green, but you have to become someone who can do more. And when you look at the next picture, the world of tomorrow starts always with the production of green power, as already the colleagues before said. So it's wind, it's PV, which we can use. Then you can go to the electrolyzers, and then you can, when you have the hydrogen, decide what you want to do. And there are, as shown from the colleague from ThyssenKrupp, different applications. We are close to mobility, and we are very close coming from engines, as you see, for ships, for other applications as well. And the story behind is always, the world cannot change from one day to the other to green fuels in the way that we are using 100% hydrogen. We need to transition. And that transition is combined with the usage of synthetic gas, or maybe liquefied synthetic gas, because that can be used in existing infrastructure. So the idea of producing hydrogen, using that wherever we can, we have now the first trains which are running on hydrogen, others as well, but using that hydrogen together with CO2, mainly if you can from natural resources, and then to produce a synthetic gas which can be used to fuel cars, to run engines in power plants, or even industrial customers, or even for the shipping industry, is quite interesting. And the most interesting here is to liquefy the gas again, which is even quite interesting for the transportation, because the question, if you want to transport H2 directly, we are already investing in the LOHC technology as well, and we have partnership there as well. But to me, it seems quite interesting even to have the liquefied methane gas. And we have a lot of response from the shipping industry saying, hey, let's mix it, because the shipping industry is running today with fuels, which is still HFO, more than 90%. And they are now starting with LNG. And then thinking up to green up the LNG with synthetic gas based on hydrogen and methane here is quite interesting. So these are a couple of things where we're really investing in. And the next picture shows you, here on the right side, you see there's a ship which will start by summer this year to use the first time where we mix a 90-10% fuel, which is 90% LNG and 10% synthetic gas. So there is a response from the market, which is quite interesting. We have to look on the long term. What does it mean due to Corona? What does it mean on the business models? This picture is just a process overview, which shows you how we are focusing on. We already have invested in the methanization, as you know. Now we have invested in the electrolysis as well. We bought a 40% stake in a small company, and we can produce hydrogen now directly as well. We are developing now the 10 to 100 megawatt technology. We are ready for the 20, 50, and under 1 megawatt stories by 2022, 2023. Today, we have the 1 megawatt solution as container and 40 megawatt and the smaller ones. But the question is, beside getting the hydrogen sold, what to do next? And then there's a great chance to go with the methanization, as I showed you. We already have knowledge in Fischer-Tropsch, and we've built their things in methanol and in ammonia. Lots of our colleagues from the marine are very much in favor of ammonia, others of methanol and with others, but I'm always having a look on the cost side, because you need to do a lot of process steps here to get that fuel produced, and this will trigger a couple of questions with regard to the business cases. So we have to look at that as well. Last but not least, for that short introduction, one picture which is important to us as well, because as some colleagues said before, we are now in a time where a lot of things have been done. We are ready for industrialization. We have the methanization under operation since year. All learning curves have been done. We now have as well electrolyzers, even if it's alkaline like ThyssenKrupp, or if it is a PEM one like ours. All this is now coming in a position where we need to have the first industrial showcases in the 50 and 100 megawatt area, because nobody really has built it and executed, and we as industry have to learn and to operate, even to get the cost curve down, because otherwise we won't get anywhere. So this is maybe the short overview. This is just a picture which shows you what are the 3 products which we already have, and this one is the 10 megawatt which we already developed. And then I think we can have more discussion later on. Thanks for your hospitality to give us a chance to present.
Thank you, Mark, for that great overview. Just as an aside, before we hand the mic to Jorgo, there is, for the panelists, there is a Q&A that is live, and you can also, if you're good at multitasking, maybe just type a few of the answers so that we don't have to, do them. With that, I would like to give the floor to the man of the moment. Jorgo has been instrumental in the European hydrogen industry. It's his mission to make it one of the major points of the future energy supply. He has been instrumental in organizing the industry to speak with the European Commission. There was a great call last week in which his idea was discussed with both the Executive Vice President of the Commission, Frans Timmermans, as well as Kadri Simpson and Benoit. But this is his moment, and Jorgo has been a great fighter for hydrogen, and I'm really looking forward to your presentation, Jorgo. The floor is yours.
Thank you very much, Frank. Tomasz, can you put on the presentation?
I can't, but I think that first, okay, now we can make you co-host. So now you can host.
I can host, yeah, if I would know. I think I don't have the screen that I had before. No.
I can show, no problem.
Yeah, it's better. It's better that you go. There we go. Just a second here.
Because if you wish, maybe it's easier for you.
I did it.
Okay.
It's easier. So, thank you very much, Frank, for your kind words. Yes, I will dive directly into it. So it was the moment at the beginning of this year. It was the hydrogen moment. So the shares of a lot of companies went up. That was excellent. But then Corona came, and we understood yesterday. We saw that there are even negative oil prices. That there will be dramatical changes, and we needed also ourselves to adapt to this as Hydrogen Europe. And the good thing is that Europe wants to stay a leader in global climate action. Not only the fact that the next COP would be in Europe is important, but also the commitment that basically the European Commission, but also the European Parliament and big parts of the European Council show. That is why we made this conference. We'll come back to it. And now is the moment for the understanding that big changes only happen in big crises. Milton Friedman said this. And this big crisis might be a possibility similar to the post-war situation where we had with the Marshall Plan, then a big push, not only for the European economy, but also for the European integration. And we might now need a second big push. And well, the Green Deal as such might be the moment, might be the plan for that recovery. So basically what we need is a, well, if you wish, Corona climate contract, CCC, where we need on one hand to look at the economic recovery, but on the other hand, also not to lose track in climate protection and in mitigation of climate effects due to CO2. And we are very, very lucky. There are a lot of Dutch people here in that call that the Dutchman in the European Commission, Mr. Timmermans, Frans Timmermans, is totally committed to exactly that idea. His idea is basically to push forward the Green Deal and to adapt all the policies that you need in order to overcome such a crisis that due to the virus has become quite severe for some parts of the economy. If we see OEMs in the car business, we just heard MAN. This is a severe crisis where not only the blue collars have to stop to work, also the white collars had to stop. Now, Mr. Green Deal, Frans Timmermans offered us to be part of this exactly with the 2x 40 gigawatt plan. He liked the plan and he said, this is something like a blueprint for my recovery plan. Can I integrate it into our recovery plans? I say, when do you want to show this? In June. I said, that's too late. We will be dead then. So that's why we did it exactly 2 weeks ago, 2 weeks and 1 day ago. And it was quite, here you see the lineup. It was quite interesting that not only we had the chance to moderate this, Mr. Breton, the Commissioner for Industry, had to step out 1 hour before because he was in the Defense Minister Committee, but he's still committed. Tomorrow, he has a big debate in his cabinet together with other cabinets about the Hydrogen Alliance that he's pushing. However, the Commissioner on Energy in Europe was totally enthusiastic about the smart sector integration, so sector coupling and sector integration. Thanks to Frank and your network, we also could welcome Aziz Rabat, the minister from Morocco, who stayed all over this video conference and was the last to leave in the end. He really made the case of his country being already doing this business, so solar and wind to hydrogen for the fertilizer industry, but also ready for export. So he's just doing it. I don't need to explain the role of Art van Bijk for this plan. And then look at this lineup of CEOs, and they really were there. They really took this very seriously. Among us, EDF CEO wanted to step out last moment. I said, okay, then you're out. Then we take another electricity provider, and he came back. So that was Jean-Bernard Lévy, who, by the way, was excellent as a speaker. So Ørsted, Vattenfall, Mark, yourself, you were there, and thanks very, very much for being there. Then you see Eric Scotto from Aqua Energy. I'm not going through all of them, but I would particularly highlight the role of Sami Perkonen. Adamos, thank you very, very much for making your CEO participate in this. Also Luc, for Jon, Jon Löcke, who was in the call. I would maybe highlight also Marco Alverà, his role, representative of the infrastructure, of gas infrastructure, who spoke in the very end. And Franz Timmermans postponed a meeting with Ursula von der Leyen for some minutes because he liked the call and he wanted to stay in. This is just to tell you, yes, it worked. Here you see the immediate tweets that they did after the call, after the video conference. You can see Kadri Simpson on the right-hand side. That's how she participated. And Franz Timmermans says, while together we are combating COVID-19, we also have to work towards a green recovery. Hydrogen has a crucial role to play in the transition, and this is where the EU can and must lead. It was great discussing how, and then he comes up with the participants. Now, what does the sector need? Because at the same time we prepared this conference, we had a request by the Commission to do a survey of what our industry needs, and we did exactly that. We asked 140 companies, and they came back to us, so it was quite amazing. And if you wish, we can also disseminate our report on that. So what the hydrogen sector needs now is that the innovative companies, so half of the participants of the survey were smaller companies, even a little bit more than half, they suffer from a major shortage of liquidity, as you can imagine. The large companies, which were planning major investments in clean technology, are threatened to abandon or severely scale down these plans. And of course, investors could be less inclined to finance the planned growth of the sector. That is why we need to make clear signals, and that's what we asked the Commission. We need a clear and immediate signal or signals that despite the current crisis, the European climate policy and objectives will be maintained and even raised. We need a clear policy support and signals for the hydrogen industry, because the impact of this should not be should be seen clearly. Then links and bailouts and financial support should come, but it should be strongly linked to the commitment to decarbonize. That's what all my predecessors in this talk said and are committed. There should be a direct support to the hydrogen value chain by compensating for short-term revenue losses. And also, we want to have some certainty of the continuation of the European research and innovation process. That is a signal for the FCHEU number 3. It's called Clean Hydrogen for Europe. And also, we need to immediately unlock first commercial markets for green hydrogen through market incentives and through public funding. And that is where the 2x 40 gigawatt initiative, where many of you have inspired us and have helped us to build this up, plays a role. We have developed this paper. Of course, it's a masterpiece of Art van Wijk, but it has also been inspired by our partners, Frank Wouters, by yourself with the Cleanergy, by our friends from the African Hydrogen Partnership, by DII, and happy to see some representatives here, and also by our Ukrainian friends. This is maybe less sun and wind than in Northern Africa or in the Arab Peninsula, but politically it's nevertheless very, very important. Yes, and it's a unique opportunity to develop green hydrogen. And I think we have to set this very clear, because I want to share with you that I was not so happy about some of the reactions of our friends from wind and solar, because they regard us sometimes as a competitor or as a threat. I never understood this, because it was clearly said by some of you before, we are the partners of renewables. We are not their competitors. And that is why I have to admit that bringing wind on board, we brought wind and solar on board. You saw the CEOs in the first panel represented pretty much this segment. They do not do the same with us. So this week there's a call of wind CEOs with Franz Timmermans, and guess who's not invited, or guess who's not even informed? I was informed, of course, by Timmermans people themselves. So this is something we have to overcome. So we are not fighting. We are the opposite. We are cooperating with open arms. And here you see the three strategic aspects that we need to do: integrate renewables, build a backbone, and also have a look at the storage capacity, not only, but especially in salt caverns. I'm not going now through all the elements of the 40 gigawatt, of the 2 times 40 gigawatt paper. The paper as such is self-explanatory, and you will find all the figures there. So investment and whatever can be done. Also how the price will develop. I want to say that it is an important element of the new industrial policy of the European Union. It finally happens again, because for so many years, there was no industrial policy. And now they understand that they could link the demands of building up this electrolyzer capacity, to say only one, but you see here the wind generator. Ørsted is, as some of you know, is already developing wind generators with integrated electrolyzers. So there is not even an electron coming out. There's directly, theoretically, there's directly a molecule coming out. So this new approach of ramping up green industry is extremely important to be also be put in this recovery plan. And that's indeed the momentum that we need to grasp. We could feed Europe with Africa's sun. And a lot of you for many years are working exactly on that idea. I personally, for the ones of you who don't know it, I entered into politics in 1986 because of a poster at my university where it said, let's turn solar energy to hydrogen. That was in '86, and there was a party that is now my party back again. So I changed party for some years, and now I'm back again. Yeah, and this shift happens exactly now, and we have seen the first drafts of the recovery plan that will be announced by Franz Timmermans and the college, possibly Ursula herself, 29 of April. That's the plan. I also know, to be honest, that there are some frictions between the commissioners and between, of course, the director generals. However, there will be a bold plan, and there will be a space for renewables in combination with hydrogen. I stop here because I think we need also some minutes to discuss. Thank you, Frank. Give back the floor to you.
Yes, thanks, Jorgo. And this is very, very insightful. I also noticed that actually all the speakers are European. I'm not sure that is by design, but you know, given that, I would like to give maybe the first question to a European who is actually based in Asia, which is Roland. And this is following some of the questions that people have asked online, and also follows the presentation by Jorgo and others. How important is it for Europe to have this as an industrial policy? Does it matter whether Europe is leading in you know, electrolyzer production? Will it go to China? How do you see that as a, you know, as you rightly describe yourself now, a customer of electrolyzers? Do you care? And how do you see that?
I mean, of course, in the end, if you are a customer, you don't care, right? We're talking about scale up, and we're talking about massive investments. And you know, when in the past, when a lot of the discussion about green hydrogen was around the electricity prices in Europe, we always tended to say, look, at these electricity prices, what you need is a highly efficient electrolyzer. So squeezing the ultimate out of efficiency because of the electricity is so expensive. Now, if you all of a sudden appear in a country which has extremely low electricity prices, now your capex chip in again, right? So the picture is a bit changing. So, I mean, I believe that in Europe, we have the best preconditions on electrolyzer technology. And it's basically the same game as we had with battery technologies and solar. I mean, if we're not able in Europe to learn from what we did wrong in the past, of course, some of the capacities on production will go to China. I mean, they're not sleeping. We know that. You see what's happening with Hydrogen Pro. We're seeing what prices they're chipping in at the moment. I basically, no, I really think that from a technology perspective, the preconditions in Europe and with all the manufacturers are really good. It's just now also a bit of a governmental policy issue, how to promote these technologies, because a lot of these technologies will be built or will be used in countries which have cheap electricity.
Thanks, Roland, and maybe Adamo and then Luc to respond to this, because I mean last week, or I mean a couple of weeks ago, there was an announcement made by GCL Polysilicon in China that they're starting the construction of a 60 gigawatt solar factory in China, 60 gigawatts per year. So that's the scale that that we have in renewables. And my question is, Luc and Adamo, what is your ambition? Like, because I mean, in the end, you know, we can talk about it. You know, it shouldn't go to China, but then you know, people have to actually make these investments. You know, work on expanding capacity, etc. What is it that is holding you back?
Yeah, so maybe that I start on answering this. So we have made an announcement already a while ago at Nel Hydrogen that we'll be scaling up our factory production capacity up to 360 megawatt additionally. That's a fully automated factory which we are going to put in the south of Norway near Porsgrunn. And because of the fully automation, we can, at the same building, further scale up to 2 gigawatt. And actually, we are already simulating that on a computer, the 360 megawatt factory, and it comes out by speeding up the line and the whole process debugging, that we probably will come to 600 megawatt capacity on that line. And maybe important to say also is that it will take for us, it will go online beginning next year. We will start shipping out electrolyzers being built there. And it took about 14 months, the time from a decision taken by our board up to having the production online. So that means that when we see the outlook to further scale up to 2 gigawatt, or to build a similar plant more closer to a market, whatever it might be, maybe Saudi Arabia then, these can be done in a very short term. So like I said, it took 14 months of time, and that is again the time we could use then, for instance, to build it 3-4 times beside each other and to come to more than a 2 gigawatt scale.
Yeah, thanks, Luc. And your CEO is never shy to say that we should not underestimate the ability of this industry to increase capacity. Adamo, how do you see?
Just to add, I don't talk about the number because you have seen the number, because ThyssenKrupp has already 1 gigawatt of capacity in Germany already available, and the plan to go to 5 gigawatt. And I go to the same numbers as Luc. We need 1 year to scale up to 5 gigawatt per year of production capacity. But we have to be careful, as also Roland said. The competition is international. We have to be ready to close to the market. We have to understand how we can have access to our market, not to create not the same mistake of solar. We created the market opportunity, but not the industry opportunity. We created the opportunity for others to sell equipment here in Europe. Do we want to repeat the same story? That's where the politics are very much important, and I really appreciate what everything is done by Hydrogen Europe to support and to connect the political, the willingness, and the regions and the industry. Because otherwise, if we just look at the supporting, like a feed-in tariff or whatever, we don't create a real market for European, we don't create industry, because also the value of this market is the industry and the jobs we are creating here. it's a little bit tricky, you know. And also when you look at Chinese manufacturers, not to be negative, but you never know what is inside the cost, and you never know what is the total cost of ownership, and you never know how much is funded by the government to support an industry. They are very good at that. You know, when they decided to go in one market, you know, the beauty of the monopolitical democracy, how you call it, it's sometimes very powerful. Huh? You decide and you do. So we have the opportunity. We are just at the beginning of one market. The capacity to scale up is not an issue. We can scale up quickly. We have to manage that in a certain way that we can create market opportunity for Europe also.
And that leads me to a question for both Marks. We're all waiting for that killer application, if you will. I mean, Mark Grunewald, MAN has made investments in pilot projects, but where is that application that will actually get the market going? Is there a clue that you can give the audience to where you see would be the first thing? Is that blending hydrogen into the gas grid? Is it in refineries? Is it ammonia? Is it for transport? What is the killer application that you see that both the public and the private should focus
on? Mark Grunewald, what I'm looking for is the following, and this is where I'm fighting for, I think, a couple of years in the German politics as well, and the European, is that we do have technology, as we've shown you now, the ability to produce in an industrialized scale, but we don't have the business case. And the question is not CapEx, the question is OpEx. Because what is, if you can produce hydrogen in a refinery in the range of, let's say, less than €2 per kilogram, not looking what the CO2 emissions are, but take that price for the relevant customer. And if I'm trying to do that with green energy and trying to produce green hydrogen, and it depends to 90% on the power price. This is why we're all thinking now about going in the regions where power is in the range not of 4 cents per kilowatt hour, maybe in the range of 2 cents per kilowatt hour. But even if I'm taking that, and if the price then to produce the hydrogen is not 2, it's maybe 4 to 5 euro per kilogram, it's still 3 to 4 times more expensive than using the gray produced CO2-based hydrogen today. So as long as there is no business incentive, no subsidy, or no legal requirement, whatever, to use these kind of green fuels, as long as this, nobody will really be ready to do this. And this is what we're running for.
Mark, I have a question for you, because I mean, as Adam already mentioned, basically the solar market was, if you will, created in many places, most notably in Germany through the feed-in tariff, right? I mean, it's the Erneuerbare Energiengesetz. Is there something like that you would propose to get this market going, to make the business case?
I would love to have the politicians not only in Germany, because this is something which we have to think European size, as we here now discuss it today. We need some kind of quotation. Let's take it, for instance, for my example, the shipping industry. You should say that ships which are going in the European Union should have a limit to some kind of emissions, and that maybe they have to take in 10% fuel, which is green or something like that. And we may have to think about the different industry sectors to think how we can introduce these kind of technologies. For the Netherlands, it's maybe quite easier because they're running out of gas, so hydrogen will come, obviously. In Germany, we do get our natural gas from Russia and other countries. I think we need for a European approach here and find some European regulations that fit for all countries. And yes, I think the politicians have to decide how to help the hydrogen producers to get some security in production. Otherwise, we won't get a business case.
Thank you, Mark. What is it that you would, need to make that grand vision that you showed us to make that work? I mean, what is the most immediate need that would help you?
Yeah, I think I'm very aligned with Mark Grunewald that this needs to be a Europe-wide framework. I think that we should look at this opportunity from not so much a cost perspective, but a benefit perspective. Okay, Yes, there will be certain costs required in terms of support mechanisms to get the market and the system going. But the benefits that we can get out of this, not only in terms of decarbonization, but in building this industry and building a industrial leadership out of Europe by the right policy framework, the benefits of that are huge across jobs, across investment, and across further scale up. So I would say, rather than looking, at what is the cost of things, no, what is the net benefit of things? It makes the discussion easier. That's number one. Number two, I think within the policy framework, there are probably 3 or 4 instruments that are key to getting this market going. One of them is, for some period of time, I think a CapEx grant mechanism that kind of reduces the cost of the actual cost of the electrolyzers while the industry scales up and brings that cost down. So perhaps for the next 3, 5, 7 years, while that happens, we need a little bit of CapEx support in order to bring that cost down so that we can be more competitive. On the other hand, we have policy mechanisms like injection into the gas grid. Why not have a Europe-wide 5 or 10% obligatory green hydrogen injection into the grid? If we just do that, where the cost of that obviously is then spread throughout all of the consumer base, just this is a huge market pool if we get that done. And the cost of it, the impact of the cost of it, I believe, is not going to be, dramatic. So another one. Lastly, I think the current Corona environment, the current very low oil and gas pricing environment, is a great opportunity for governments to actually look at the carbon tax mechanism, right? The carbon tax mechanism is the other side of the coin, because if we push up the cost of carbon, automatically the cost of non-carbon becomes more competitive. So I think there are 3, 4, 5 specific mechanisms, but they should be pan-European, because it should all.
Thanks, Mark. Jorgo, I mean, we've heard. So there could be potential blending a certain percentage. There could be financial support for the investment, and then indeed lastly the price for carbon, which we still don't have to the extent that it makes a difference. Politically in Europe, which are the ones that you think are the first ones to fly?
I think it's really, like both Marks just put it rightly, it's a unique situation with this Corona crisis now to bring this all together, because we need all these elements, but we need to stop to be naive. You cannot fight, I think Roland said it, Adamo said it, we cannot fight this mono decision-making power China with a continuation of naive politics. Of course, we need a carbon border tax. That's clear. So if we ever want to proceed with making our economy greener, the non-green imports have to be levied. That's for sure. Otherwise, it doesn't work. That's one.
But is that going to happen? Because
yes,
I mean,
yes, it's going to happen. No, it's going to happen because let's not kid ourselves. The WTO at the moment is in a very, very difficult situation, also because of the behavior of the US.
Yep.
So you have on one hand a US doing whatever they want. You have on the other hand, China leaving no space for any technology to flourish in Europe. And that's why Mrs. Vestager, the competition commissioner, who is a liberal, by the way, announced 2 weeks ago or 10 days ago in an interview, she said, we will allow member states in the European Union to buy strategic companies in order to protect them against China. That's new. So here you see that the Commission starts to think into that direction. I would say finally, because industrial policy is not just helping some industries, it's really having a coherent strategy. Plus, that sounds very protectionist. It isn't. It's just when you set the course into a different direction, you need to think really comprehensively.
You're preaching to the choir.
Okay, okay. So the second point is the targets. So I take Mark Rechter's example of blending. Yeah, you could blend, but basically what we want more and more is dedicated backbones. So pure hydrogen backbones. So it's up to the discretion of the member state, let's take Portugal, to say, okay, we have a 20% green hydrogen target or renewable decarbonized, let's call it decarbonized hydrogen target. We will have one dedicated pipeline where we put this 20% in the overall system. Or you could say we put 5% here, 5%. So it's up to the member state to decide how they achieve the target. I think this gives some flexibility to the member states. At the same time, the quota, and Franz Timmermans is a big fan of this idea of a quantitative approach, not a priced approach. He came to one of our meetings, big meetings, and said literally he's fed up to experiment with prices, with CO2 prices. It takes too long. So that's why he favors targets. However, I think as a third element, and now we come to the CO2 pricing, we need this, it's an old word, it's the internalization of external costs. We need to internalize the costs of CO2, what some systems do. The Swiss system does it quite obviously and quite, yeah, I would say also with some success. It could be better. And this now is the time where we can do that. I stop here, but these are three elements that we definitely need to tackle on a European basis, just as a point of information. At the moment, the European Commission is preparing a law, a legislative approach, which is called Smart Sector Integration Package, where all these elements will find somehow their way into law. And the second is there will be a standalone paper that will be published maybe a little bit earlier, which is hydrogen strategy. It's also a strategy, a communication. So the EU has understood the lesson of the hour.
Thanks for that. So Roland, I have a question for you, because you know, the Netherlands government you know, released their hydrogen roadmap. I think it was 2 weeks ago, and that contained a 14% target also for aviation fuels, which is actually not a European thing, because aviation fuels are not part of the Renewable Energy Directive, which will be recast next year. But the Netherlands said, Europe, yes or no, we are going to introduce this by 2023. Now, you can argue that Europe is perfectly capable of making that itself, and Adamo can do that in Duisburg or wherever, but there is also an opportunity for you to make that at scale in Saudi Arabia, and maybe you're cost competitive. How do you see that?
In fact, I would suggest, excuse me, because we have still 5 minutes, so maybe we can extend 5 minutes more. I know, you see, it's because of me, of this YouTube, but I suggest that we will need also, you know, to continue the topic in the future. Yes.
I'm sorry, I need to leave 2 or 3 minutes before 3 because I have another one. So, you know, the time is short for me.
Same for me.
Yes,
yeah,
6
we need
minutes.
to leave. Maybe we can reschedule something. Yeah.
Yes, yes. I think we will speak with Frank, with Cornelius, and with other colleagues, and we can make maybe make, you see, like half day, for example, to tackle different topics even, you know.
No worries.
Yeah.
Okay.
Because it's too much exciting, yeah, as I said before. So
okay. So maybe then we still have a minute or two, so that Roland.
Yes, for final statements, and then.
Yes, 1 minute or two.
Could I add some thoughts just very quickly, Frank?
Well, I asked Roland the question.
Oh, sorry.
And after that.
Go ahead.
Okay, I think the question was whether we can do these kind of synthetic fuels, whether it's aviation or whatever. Yes, of course. And again, whenever you talk about green hydrogen or synthetic fuels, it's about the feedstock, which is renewable energy. I think a lot of that can be done in Europe, but not all. I think we would all agree to that. Aviation in particular, I would not really stress that, because if we look at the global contribution to CO2 emissions in the aviation industry, it's comparably low to the other sectors. And what I would really highlight and push into the discussion is, I mean, we have already established metrics in Europe, which are putting a lot of burden on the car and the transportation sector. Yeah, so I mean, we know in Germany they're all on the train to go battery electric, but this is not going to solve the problem. And if you look at the forecasts for global upscaling of cars and vehicles, which will still use an internal combustion engine, I think we're doing exactly a wrong thing in Europe to abandon the combustion engine. We have a lot of things to do, and I mean, if we can achieve that in Europe, there's a clear regulation which is accounting e-fuels, yeah, green fuels to the greenhouse targets of the car OEMs, that would already, in my perspective, drive a lot of market and activate market without even talking about CO2 emissions, because you have it already built in their targets.
Okay. Thank you. And Mark, you had a thought.
Yes, just two quick thoughts. I think first of all, we're talking about a little piece of the puzzle missing for this whole system to start accelerating. And I think that it's key, especially now in the time of Corona, and we have the opportunity now also because of Corona, I think to get a much more effective collaboration going across Europe in terms of the private sector, and send the signals that are necessary to politics so that politics feels comfortable to make the framework decisions. So I think that there's opportunity for very close and dense messaging towards politics that, of course, Hydrogen Europe, I think, is doing an excellent job in, but I think we can add on to that. In addition to that, we are very much looking at integrating value change so that the entire cross-domain industry can lift jointly, let's say, across the board. So not only production of hydrogen, but also manufacturing and offtake. And so we are even extending that into the solar manufacturing sector. Meaning that Europe currently has another huge opportunity on the back of new technology to relaunch its solar manufacturing industry, which is something that we're also working on. And I'd like to just ask everybody to keep that in mind, that if we get the value chain collaboration going, there's a lot of things that we can do and generate a lot of economic growth and jobs. So thanks.
I think that, I mean, those couldn't be better last words. And in view of the time, I think I would like to thank all of you. This was a great panel. I think there is more to come, and as Thomas already said, probably we need a bit more time to cover some of the bases that we haven't even touched upon. Florence, especially in the field of R&D and all the stuff, the great stuff that you're doing, there's so much more to cover than we could cover today. But once again, thank you very much for this insightful and hope to see and speak soon.
So maybe I will just add a final word, yes, because you were speaking about collaboration, and I think that before I met Adama, I thought that green hydrogen is, dangerous for solar, yes. But after today's meeting, I think it's such a huge opportunity, actually. So I'm even more motivated to work together, and we'll do all from our side to help you, because you see, we'll increase the market for all of us.
Yes.
And
just keep in mind that at the end we will have solar and hydrogen. So I think it's important to have it in mind.
So there is our chairman.
Yes, as a conference chair, I just would like to congratulate on a fantastic session. I just would like to mention that a little bit short in the session came the huge demands for green hydrogen from the decarbonization of steel and concrete industry. As a matter of fact, in Europe, we might need more power for green hydrogen production than we need for normal to replace our fossil-based energy system. So this adds to the urgency of everything what was discussed today.
So
Thank
thank you so much, Florence, Luke, Frank, and all the participants. And Jorgo, we need to think about partnership.
Absolutely.
Because together we are stronger. Thumbs up, all the guys. Thank you so much. Thank you so much. And keep in touch. Thanks for your time.
Thank you.
We will send you as soon as possible all the links to YouTube, etc., so you can share with your audience also.
Yeah, and thanks, Frank. Very well done.
Thank you.
Everybody.
Thank you.
Besides me at the beginning with this YouTube link, but thank you so
All
much.
right.
Bye-bye.
Okay, bye.
Bye.